Welcome, wanderer. Tonight, the Firefly crosses an ocean to Japan's mountain villages, where ancient rivers remember their paths, and guardians watch the water with eyes older than stone. Here, a young engineer from the city will learn that some knowledge cannot be measured with instruments, and that the spirits who tend the water have been reading its language far longer than humans have built dams. This is a story about listening to what we cannot see, trusting wisdom that transcends data, and discovering that the most important partnerships bridge the old ways and the new. The bus rattled to a stop at the edge of a village that barely qualified as one. A handful of houses clinging to a mountainside, a small shrine with faded red paint, and a single convenience store that looked like it had been built in the 1970s and never updated. Yuki stepped off with her equipment case and laptop bag, pulling her long black hair into a simple ponytail as she surveyed her assignment for the next week. She wore practical clothes for fieldwork, dark trousers, a button-down shirt under a light jacket, boots suitable for rough terrain. Everything about her screamed city efficiency, from her waterproof watch to the precisely organized pockets in her bag. She was 26, 3 years out of her master's program, and on track for a promotion that would make her the youngest senior engineer in her firm's history. This assessment was supposed to be routine. Investigate some villager complaints about the newly constructed dam, confirm everything was structurally sound, file her report, and return to Tokyo by Friday. Simple, professional, career advancing. The guest house was a traditional wooden structure at the edge of the village, with a blue-tiled roof and sliding doors that had probably been there for generations. An elderly woman emerged as Yuki approached, bowing in greeting. "You must be the engineer from Tokyo. I'm Tanaka-san, but please, call me Oba-san. Everyone does." Her face was lined but kind, her movements still spry despite her evident age. The room Oba-san showed her was small but immaculately kept. Tatami mats, a low table, futon already laid out, and a window overlooking the river valley. Yuki could see the dam from here, a concrete arc spanning the narrow gorge, water dark and smooth behind it. "The dam is new," Oba-san said, following her gaze. "Only 2 years. But the river is old. It doesn't like being held." Yuki smiled politely, the way she'd learned to smile at superstitious clients. "Rivers don't have preferences, Obaya-san. They follow physical laws, gravity, pressure, erosion patterns." The old woman's expression didn't change. "Perhaps, but the Kappa who lives there certainly has preferences, and he's been very unhappy." Yuki unpacked her equipment, letting the comment pass without response. Kappa. River spirits with dishes of water on their heads, who loved cucumbers and drowned unwary swimmers in old folk tales. She'd heard these stories as a child, but she'd also learned differential equations and fluid dynamics. She knew which one was real. The next morning, she began her assessment. The dam was small by modern standards, built primarily for flood control, with a secondary function of providing hydroelectric power to the village and 2 others downstream. The construction company's reports showed everything within acceptable parameters. Her own initial readings confirmed it. Stress levels normal, water pressure controlled, structural integrity sound. But the villagers she interviewed told a different story. "The water sounds wrong," an old farmer said, squinting at the dam from his field. "Used to sing, you know. Now it mutters, angry muttering." "Fish have moved downstream," a woman at the shrine mentioned. "Even the birds don't nest near the reservoir anymore." "The Kappa tried to warn the construction crew," another elder said seriously. "They laughed at him. Now look what's happened." Yuki documented their concerns professionally, while dismissing them internally. Anthropomorphizing nature was common in rural areas, but it wasn't data. It wasn't evidence. It wasn't something she could put in a report to her supervisor, Nakamura-san, who was already skeptical about this assignment. She spent 3 days measuring, calculating, modeling. Everything looked fine. The dam was functioning exactly as designed. On the 4th evening, as she was photographing the dam's spillway for her documentation, she saw him. He sat on a rock in the middle of the river below the dam, completely still, watching her. At first, Yuki thought it was a trick of the light, the way water and shadow could create shapes that seemed almost solid. But then he moved, turning his head to track her as she shifted position, and she couldn't explain him away. He was perhaps 4 feet tall, with a shell like a turtle curving over his back, skin covered in fine fish-like scales that caught the evening light in greens and blues. His eyes were enormous, frog-like, golden with horizontal pupils. He wore something that might have been woven river grass, and his hands, webbed, she noticed with a jolt, rested calmly on his knees. A kappa. An actual kappa. Yuki's first instinct was to check her phone. Had she been working too long without a break? Was this heat exhaustion, despite the cool mountain air? But the creature remained solid, real, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You're the engineer," he said, and his voice was like water over stones, smooth, continuous, inevitable. "You've been measuring my river." Yuki's engineering training warred with the evidence of her eyes. "You can't be real." And yet, he gestured at himself, a movement both graceful and amphibian. "I've lived in this river for 300 years. I know every stone of its bed, every shift of its current, every fish that swims here. And I'm telling you, your dam is going to fail." "The structural analysis," she started saying. "Your instruments measure steel and concrete. They don't measure what the water is telling you." He rose, and Yuki saw that his feet were also webbed, perfectly adapted for a life in water. "The dam holds the river wrong. The pressure builds in places your calculations don't account for. When the heavy rains come, and they're coming soon, I can taste it in the air. The water will find the weakness." Yuki forced herself to breathe slowly. This was impossible. But if it wasn't impossible, if this was somehow real? "Show me. Show me what you mean." The kappa's large eyes blinked, a nictitating membrane sliding across them. "Come to the river tomorrow at dawn. Bring your instruments if you must. I'll show you what your machines can't see." Then he slipped into the water and was gone, leaving only ripples that could have been anything. Yuki walked back to the guest house in a daze. Oba-san was preparing dinner, and the smell of rice and grilled fish and something pickled drew Yuki to the kitchen despite her spinning thoughts. "Sit, sit," the old woman urged, setting out dishes. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that," Yuki murmured. The meal was simple but extraordinary. Perfectly steamed rice, each grain distinct. Grilled mackerel with a crisp skin and tender flesh. Miso soup with fresh tofu and wakame. But what stopped Yuki mid-bite was the tsukemono, an array of pickles that exploded with flavor. Crisp cucumber in rice bran, tangy and complex. Daikon radish with shiso, bright and refreshing. Eggplant in mustard that had a kick that made her eyes water in the best way. "These are incredible, Oba-san." The old woman smiled. "My cucumber pickles are the Kappa's favorite. I leave a dish for him every week by the old stone near the water. Some traditions are worth keeping, even if the young people forget why we keep them." Yuki set down her chopsticks. "You've seen him, the Kappa?" "Yes, few times. But my grandmother saw him often. She taught me the old agreements, the cucumbers we grow for him, the respect we show the water, the way we ask permission before taking from the river." Oba-san refilled Yuki's tea. The construction company didn't ask permission, didn't leave offerings, didn't listen when the old ones tried to warn them. And now the Kappa is worried. When a Kappa worries about water, sensible people pay attention. That night, Yuki lay awake on her futon, staring at the ceiling. Her rational mind insisted this was stress, suggestion, maybe something in the mountain air. But another part of her, a part she'd trained herself to ignore in favor of data and equations, remembered her grandmother's stories, the old shrines her family used to visit, the sense that the world was bigger and stranger than what could be measured. She went to the river at dawn. The Kappa was waiting, sitting on the same rock, surrounded by morning mist rising from the water. Without speaking, he gestured for her to follow, then slipped into the river. Yuki hesitated only a moment before wading in after him, gasping at the cold. He moved through the water like he was part of it, and Yuki struggled to keep up. Her instruments waterproofed, but her clothes soaked, her carefully tied ponytail coming loose. He led her to the dam's base, to points where water swirled in patterns she'd never noticed from above. He showed her rocks that vibrated with a frequency her equipment hadn't detected. He demonstrated how the water was finding channels through the concrete. Microscopic now, but growing. "The dam fights the river's nature," he explained, patient as a teacher with a struggling student. "Water wants to flow in certain patterns, carved over centuries. Your structure ignores this, tries to impose a different logic. The river is learning to work around it. When the pressure increases, when the summer rains come, it will find the path of least resistance." Yuki's mind raced. She couldn't see what he was describing exactly, but she understood the principle. Every structure had stress points. Every material had a breaking threshold. If water was finding microfractures, exploiting weaknesses her instruments had missed. "I need to run new tests," she said. "Different parameters. If you're right, I am right. The question is whether you'll believe me in time." She spent the next 2 days running every test she could think of. Ultrasonic imaging, vibration analysis, water pressure readings at points the original survey had deemed unnecessary. And slowly, reluctantly, the data began to support what the Kappa had shown her. There were anomalies. Small ones within acceptable tolerances according to standard engineering practice, but present nonetheless. Microfractures in the concrete, unusual erosion patterns, water pressure spikes that lasted only seconds, but repeated in a concerning rhythm. The supervisor's response was immediate and dismissive. Tanaka-san, those readings are well within normal parameters. Every dam has minor stress patterns. That's why we build with safety margins. Nakamura's voice over the phone was impatient. I need you back here by Friday. We have the Yoshida project presentation, and you're leading it. This promotion depends on you demonstrating judgment, not chasing shadows because some villagers are superstitious. But if the rainy season, the dam will be fine. File your report and come home. Yuki stood by the river after the call ended, phone clutched in her hand. The promotion she'd worked toward for 3 years, the recognition, the salary increase, the respect of her peers. All of it hung on her demonstrating she could distinguish real problems from imaginary ones. But the Kappa's words echoed in her mind. When the heavy rains come, the water will find the weakness. She found him that evening in his usual spot. My supervisor says the dam is safe, that the stress readings are normal. The Kappa's large eyes blinked slowly. Your supervisor isn't here. He doesn't feel what the river feels. I can't file a report based on what... She stopped herself. Based on something I can't prove. Then don't prove it. Just listen. His voice was patient but strained, as though he'd had this conversation before with others who hadn't listened either. I'm not asking you to believe in magic. I'm asking you to trust experience. This river has flooded, has frozen, has run dry, has changed course. I've seen all of it, survived all of it. This dam is new. It doesn't understand the water yet, and the water doesn't understand it. Rivers don't understand anything. They're just physical laws. The Kappa's tone held something like frustration now. Yes, forces acting on matter, but those forces are more complex than your instruments measure. The river is a system. The dam is an intrusion into that system. And systems under stress find equilibrium, sometimes destructively. Yuki wanted to argue, but found she couldn't. Because he was right, in a way her professors had never quite articulated. Engineering wasn't just about calculating load-bearing capacity. It was about understanding how structures interacted with the environments they inhabited. The weather forecast came 3 days later. Heavy rains predicted for the region, the first major precipitation of the early summer season, the rainy season arriving a week ahead of schedule. Yuki watched the forecast with growing dread. Nakamura had ordered her back to Tokyo, but she'd delayed, claiming she needed one more round of measurements. In truth, she'd been spending her days with the Kappa, learning to see the river the way he did. Not as an engineering problem, but as a living system. Oba-san had taught her about the cucumber garden, shown her how to make sukimono, explained the old water rituals. Yuki found herself settling into the rhythm of the village, in a way she'd never expected. Waken with the sun, eating meals that were simple but perfect, sitting by the river in the evening, listening to it, learn its voice. She was falling in love with this place, with its quietness, its connection to something older than concrete and calculations, with the way Oba-san hummed while cooking, the way the shrine priest nodded in passing, the way even the Kappa, a creature that shouldn't exist, had become something like a friend. but the rain was coming. "You should leave," the Kappa told her the day before the storm was due. "If I'm right, this will be dangerous." "If you're right, people need to be warned. The village could flood," she said, sounding actually worried. "Then warn them. What are you waiting for?" Yuki tried. She went to the village headman, explained her concerns, showed her data. He listened politely and said they'd keep an eye on the dam. She called the construction company, who told her the structure was rated for twice the expected rainfall. She called Nakamura again, who told her she was jeopardizing her career over nothing. That night, Yuki sat in her room at the guest house, staring at her laptop. She'd written 2 reports. One confirmed the dam was safe within standard parameters. The other detailed her concerns about stress patterns and recommended immediate inspection. Submitting the first would save her promotion. Submitting the second would likely end her career. Crying wolf over a dam that would probably be fine, influenced by local superstition and a creature she couldn't even prove existed. The rain started just after midnight. Yuki woke to the sound of it hammering the roof and knew immediately this was worse than forecast. She pulled on her clothes and ran to the window. Even in darkness, she could see the river rising, water churning white and violent. She grabbed her phone and ran outside. The rain was cold and driving, soaking her instantly despite her jacket. She called the Kappa's name, shouting over the storm, and he appeared from the water, struggling against the current. "It's happening," he called. "The pressure points, they're failing." "Show me where." "If we can release pressure manually, open the spillways." "It's beyond that now. The dam will hold or break on its own. But the village, you need to evacuate the village. If it fails, the flood will reach here in minutes." Yuki's mind raced. The village headman's house, the emergency alert system. She ran, the Kappa keeping pace in the swollen river beside her, his form barely visible in the dark water. She pounded on doors, shouted warnings. Some villagers emerged confused, others frightened. Obaa-san appeared in a doorway, took one look at Yuki's face and the rising river, and began calling neighbors. "Everyone to the shrine," the headman finally decided, seeing the water level. "Higher ground." The villagers moved with surprising efficiency, the elderly helping each other, younger people carrying supplies. Yuki ran back towards the dam, the Kappa beside her. "What are you doing?" he called. "If there's any chance of preventing a total failure, emergency releases, anything." "You'll be killed if it goes." "Then help me." They reached the dam just as the first section began to give way. Yuki could see it in her flashlight beam, water forcing through cracks, concrete crumbling, the structure shuddering under pressure it was never designed to handle. The Kappa had been right. Her instruments had missed it. The engineers had missed it. Everyone had missed it, except the creature who'd lived in this water for 3 centuries. "The emergency spillway," Yuki shouted. "If we can open it manually, release some pressure." The Kappa dove into churning water. Yuki ran for the access panel, fumbling with her keys, her hands shaking. The manual release was designed for exactly this situation, but it required 2 people, one at the panel, one at the gate mechanism below. She got the panel open just as the Kappa surfaced. "There's a wheel, submerged, on the left side." he disappeared again. Yuki watched her instruments, watched the pressure readings spike and surge. She could see the math now, could see exactly what the Kappa had tried to show her. The water finding weaknesses, exploiting them, the structure failing not all at once, but in cascading stages. The spillway groaned and began to open. Water roared through the new channel, pressure dropping incrementally. Not enough to save the dam entirely, but enough to slow the failure, to turn catastrophic collapse into controlled degradation. The Kappa surfaced again, gasping. "It's working! Keep it open!" They worked through the night, Yuki at the controls and the Kappa in the water, making adjustments, responding to the river's changes, finding a balance between releasing enough pressure and maintaining enough structure. Other villagers arrived, young men who knew the dam's maintenance, the headman with emergency supplies, Oba-san with thermoses of hot tea. It became a strange collaboration. Yuki's engineering knowledge combined with the Kappa's understanding of water, supplemented by the villagers' knowledge of the land, their experience with previous floods, their willingness to work through the storm. By dawn, the crisis had passed. The dam was damaged, would need complete rebuilding, but it hadn't catastrophically failed. The village was safe. The river, finally released from its incorrect constraints, found a more natural flow. Yuki sat in the mud, soaked and exhausted, watching the sunrise break through the clouds. The Kappa sat beside her on the riverbank, looking equally tired, his scales dull without water. "You believed me," he said quietly. "Finally." Almost too late. But not too late. That's what matters. The aftermath was complicated. Yuki's report detailed the dam's failure points, but she carefully framed it as a learning experience. New monitoring techniques needed, better integration of environmental factors, more comprehensive stress analysis. She didn't mention the Kappa. She didn't need to. The data supported his warnings, even if she couldn't explain how she'd known where to look. Nakamura was furious about the delay, dismissive of her concerns, right up until the construction company's own engineers confirmed her findings. Then he was congratulatory, already spinning it as the firm's thorough approach, catching problems others missed. The promotion was offered. Yuki surprised herself by asking for time to think about it. She spent her last week in the village, helping with the recovery effort, learning more from Oba-san about Tsukimono, walking the river with the Kappa in the evenings, watching the water return to its natural patterns. The dam would be rebuilt, but differently this time, with the Kappa's input, though they'd call it traditional environmental knowledge in the official documents. On her final morning, Yuki found Oba-san in the garden, tending the cucumber plants that were just beginning to fruit. "Oba-san, are there any old houses for sale in the village or nearby?" The old woman looked up, a knowing smile on her weathered face. "Thinking of coming back?" "Maybe. Not now. I have things to finish in Tokyo. But in a few years?" Yuki looked toward the river, where she could just see the Kappa sitting on his rock, watching the water. "I think I'd like to work on projects like this. Small scale, where the engineering has to work with the environment, not against it. Where people still remember that rivers are more than just water flow rates." "The Sato house is empty," Oba-san said. "Has been for 5 years. The family would probably sell cheap to someone who'd actually lived there. She pulled a cucumber from the vine, perfect and crisp. You could have a garden, grow cucumbers for the Kappa, learn the old ways properly. Yuki took the cucumber, feeling its weight in her palm. "I'll come back," she said. "I don't know exactly when, but I will." That afternoon, she walked down to the river one last time. The Kappa was waiting, as she'd known he would be. "Thank you," she said, "for being patient with me, for not giving up when I didn't listen." "The river has taught me patience," he replied. "Water doesn't rush, it persists. It finds a way. I'm going back to Tokyo, but I'm coming back here to stay eventually." The Kappa's large eyes blinked slowly. "The river will still be here. I will still be here. Take your time. Learn what you need to learn in your city. But remember that instruments only measure what they're designed to measure. That some knowledge can't be quantified. That working with nature is better than fighting it." Yuki smiled. "I'll remember." She left the cucumber on the flat rock by the water, the traditional offering, and watched the Kappa accept it with a small bow of acknowledgement. The bus back to the city was crowded and loud. Everything the village wasn't. Yuki pulled out her laptop and opened both versions of her report. After a moment's consideration, she began a third version, one that would recommend her firm to establish a new division, focused on small-scale, environmentally integrated projects in rural areas. Projects that required engineers who could listen to local knowledge, who understood that successful structures worked with their environments, rather than imposing on them. It was ambitious. It would take years to establish. But Yuki had learned patience from a river guardian who'd waited 3 centuries for someone to listen. She had time. And she had a destination now, not just a promotion or a career goal, but a place where she belonged, where her skills could serve something more than corporate ambitions. The village was waiting. The river was waiting. The Kappa was waiting. And someday, Yuki would come home. The river flows on, finding its balance between human need and natural rhythm, tended by engineers who have learned to listen and guardians who have learned to hope again. We discover that ancient wisdom and modern knowledge are not enemies, but partners. That some truths are felt through water before they can be proven with instruments, and that saving what matters sometimes means trusting what we cannot measure. Sleep well, dear wanderer. May you find partnership between old ways and new, and may you honor both what can be measured and what can only be felt.